Hey everyone, welcome to GTM Secrets, everything go to market, sales, marketing, RevOps, you name it. Today I have on Stephanie. Stephanie's got a really interesting background, particularly with some of the metrics that she's been able to tackle, like low cost per lead, awesome pipeline, etc. So I'm really excited to have her. Stephanie, can you give a little bit of background on yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. First, it's nice to be here. I currently lead marketing for a construction tech firm called Headlight. We serve the government agencies and private construction firms in kind of that whole asset life cycle from planning and pre-con all the way through asset management and contract admin. And
Let's set the frame here. Who is your ideal customer persona that you market to? Construction firm, sure, but who in it? What size? Can you give us a little bit of background there?
Yes. So I think about our audience in three kind of portions. We have both public and private agencies, but within those, you have that executive flight level. So they're leading the agency, they're delivering on this overall mission and objective.
Okay.
What they care about is much higher level. You have the users, so project managers. They care about what is happening in my day-to-day and how is this going to help me improve my job. And then you've got the tech folks, your IT people. How does this impact our cybersecurity profile? And how does this impact our compliance? So those three different personas are very similar between public and private agencies.
Okay.
And that's how we're breaking down who our audience is.
So if you have to, I mean, what you guys do over there at Headlight, it sounds like it's multiple decision makers. You have to get multiple people on board, which sucks. How do you, when it comes to your strategy, first of all, is it primarily ABM focused? Is it a little bit broader than that? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, buying committees are a big part of the buying cycle for our product. ABM is a big focus. I've found that it is most successful when you have both an advocate, so somebody who works in that agency. Often they're change makers. They're looking to improve process and not just, how does my life change? Can I do this better? But how can I fix this process so it's just easier? Not for
Yep.
me, not just for me, but for my associated teams. That person becomes the advocate and helps introduce us to everybody that we need. But also, before we get to that person, case studies, project examples, testimonials, all of that content so that they are able to see themselves in another person who solved this problem that's common to all of them with technology. So it's like the chicken and the egg, which comes first, right? Case study or the client advocate? Both. So
Got it. I thankfully now in what I do, I target heads of sales and marketing, either or. It's perfect. I don't envy you. I used to sell enterprise services. I had to get a lot of people on board. It makes marketing, for every extra decision maker, your marketing gets that much more complicated. So kudos. One of the things that I'm curious about, though, on your LinkedIn, it says that you generated $1 million in pipeline in such a niche space, right? Construction tech. And I'm sure it's very lucrative. I'm in the SaaS space. I get it. But that is very niche. And calling or reaching out to project managers sounds brutal. Targeting a CIO or whatever the case might be is never fun. You're not dealing with the most fun prospects to deal with. How the hell did you generate $1 million in pipeline in just 6 months for a relatively small early stage company that I assume your prospects have likely never heard of?
yeah, so we have a handful of incredible clients and some really solid industry relationships too. So I focused on creating a really integrated marketing strategy, and our webinars were a massive channel basically for
Those
that.
still work?
Yes, we have B2C. So I think also what's happening in kind of the SaaS space in government and private industry, especially construction, we lag a little bit behind retail. So webinars for our industry speaking engagements are still a great way to nurture existing clients and provide a spotlight for people who are doing a great job. A big part of that pipeline generation, a big focus is strategic partnerships. I partnered with industry associations like ENR and ASCE and SmartBrief, and that helped us tap into an established network of people specific to our industry, specific to our niche, and that helped to get just increase the credibility and visibility that we have, which just helped to drive pipeline even more. But ABM and content marketing were really big pieces of that. So selecting our clients who have a really cool project or they've innovated with our technology and would like to tell their story, providing them that platform, and so helping both our sales team, our customer facing CX teams, and our speakers to promote that.
Mhm.
We use case studies to promote our webinars. So
How do you actually promote those? So, okay, it sounds like industry organizations, that's great. But when you say promote or driving people to a webinar, is it ads? Is it emails? Is it sponsoring a post in a publication specific to your industry? Is it a mix of all sorts of things?
yeah, so it depends on the specific event, the topic and the audience for that event, depending on where they exist. So a lot of times email, we wrote emails for our sales team to use. We had branding emails, marketing emails that go out. LinkedIn is a big platform to engage and talk with our audience. For one webinar, I used SmartBrief. So we had an email that went out to their audience that drove to a blog post that's specific to a theme that's happening that month. So in September, I think it's peak hurricane season right now.
Yeah.
So disaster recovery, how to use technology, the same technology that your team uses every day to respond and recover from an emergency.
Got
We
it.
did use ads, but email is probably primary.
Cold email or like email nurturing?
Nurturing mostly. Cold email was not so cold. We're going through SmartBrief. They've already got, an established list. So nurture.
Got it. Now, one of the things that you also mention is you have a $39 cost per lead within, it looks like events. Talk to me about how you make the most out of that and how you got the CPL down. When I imagine your clients are worth potentially a lot of money, it's B2B, you're targeting some pretty difficult people in my experience. How'd you get it down so low?
Yes, it's a great question. I was very strategic. So the webinar program when we launched was a new channel and we were testing to see what would happen. So the budget allocated for this program wasn't like just whatever you need. We set something reasonable and pretty small to test it. There's some ad optimization that's part of it, but not a large part. We didn't rely on ads to drive registrations or even drive awareness. We focused mostly on content. So white papers, blogs, case studies. We connected with people on LinkedIn, via email, at conferences. So a lot of face-to-face relationship-based communication. And the strategic relationships with organizations were also really important. They've got a massive list. People are already further down that buying journey. And there's a sense of confidence that you have. Like, I'm familiar with ENR, I'm familiar with SmartBrief. And if they're partnering with this organization, they must be, reasonable enough. This isn't a fly-by-night organization, right? It's a legitimate company with a legitimate product. So that definitely helped to keep our CPL low. But email also, smart nurturing sequences is huge.
Makes sense. Now, you mentioned ABM. Are there any specific ABM tools that you guys use, like Sixth Sense, Demand Base, anything like that?
No, we don't. So we're still a
Interesting.
smaller company. Um,
And Sixth Sense is an ungodly cost.
yeah, we don't. I think once we are able to scale, revisiting our tech stack will be certainly reasonable. But today, it's just not. It's not it's not a priority right now for everything
Sure.
that as a company we need to do. It's just not the key.
Now, you mentioned a lot of it is I'll call it the softer side of marketing. So content, industry publications, etc. It's not direct response marketing sort of a deal. Are you, and you mentioned white papers and whatnot, which is good if you have email opt-ins and so forth. But are you guys doing any SEO, or is it literally like middle of funnel, just nurturing gated content that they're opting into? Like what does that look like? And are you using any AI tools to help you build out that content, or is it literally just all handwritten from industry experts?
So both, all of the above to an extent. We partnered with an agency for a lot of SEO support. Just was one of those things that with a small team, you have to pick and choose what you're going to tackle and what you hire out for. So we partnered with an SEO company who did a great job. They helped.
That's rare. Hearing somebody actually like their agency is very rare.
I mean, I think probably there's a range of agencies, some better than others, right?
Yep.
But pretty happy. They did a great job. It was a good partnership. We worked well together. It was a good feedback loop. I think that's probably really important and key for a good agency relationship. So
So,
SEO is hard, but probably middle of funnel. Our industry is extremely relationship based.
yep.
So if I know you, I'm more interested in doing business. So referrals are huge. Middle of funnel's big. Those relationships, getting referrals, having case studies to show that we've done this type of work in this geographic location, really, really key. And our clients are speakers, so they're telling their story, their success by using our product, which is cool.
Yep. No, makes sense. Now, what I'm really curious about, so a lot of that is, I mean, it's awesome, right? But not everyone has the luxury of really specific industry type associations and whatnot that maybe you do. For example, at Identity Matrix, basically any marketer can use us. And while most of our clients are in the SaaS space, the best that you can get are massive LinkedIn groups or Slack channels, et cetera, with a billion marketers of all different levels. And a lot of it's just generic BS. So what I am curious about is you mentioned, I think it was 3.5 times more social engagement. And that was particularly on LinkedIn. Correct me if I'm wrong.
LinkedIn is a big driver for us, yes.
How? Because I can't imagine construction project managers are on LinkedIn much. CIOs don't go on LinkedIn quite as much. I'm someone with a decent following on LinkedIn, but my engagement is horrible. So I'm very curious, even selfishly, how'd you pull that off?
Part of it's timing. So we are a startup currently moving into more of a scale up business size. So part of the timing was just the beginning of the company when we started really actively posting on LinkedIn, being able to grow the audience. We had to be really thoughtful about it. People buy from people. So
Yep.
I created a lot of content for our customer facing teams to use, both for the executives and sales and CX folks to be able to engage and to post, being really human about how we talk about ourselves and not so much talking about, nothing that's really navel gazy. So nothing that's like, Headlight can do this. More so, this customer delivered a complex bridge project 6 months early and under budget. We're really talking about the customer and putting them at the forefront. That was huge, and being just really active. So that, first timing is huge. This first couple of years, and the way that we were able to build that audience quickly has helped that engagement. I mean, certainly you have that ramp up and then it starts to level off.
Yep.
But that first year or two, big.
So you have two extremes. You have someone who they manage social media and it's very corporate, very bland. No one cares, right? And then you have people who give their entire life story. I see people even share their revenue numbers, their profit numbers. You have these CEOs crying about layoffs they just did, wanting sympathy, etc. Like, you have some really personal and weird people on LinkedIn. How do you find that right blend?
I think making sure, one, that you're authentic, and two, that you know who your audience is. You have to be very specific and very clear about who your audience is, and more importantly, who they are not. You can't just throw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and hope it all sticks.
Yeah.
So for one of the people on our team, he is really interested in how multimodal transportation is becoming really important to municipalities, which is a very
Snooze.
thing. I know, right? But if you think about, I want to go on a bike ride with my kids, how do we do that? If there's no bike lanes and if the sidewalks are not accessible or they're just not there. So he is able to bridge what's important to our customers and his territory. There's a lot of funding for multimodal projects. There's, timing also. I mentioned the bipartisan infrastructure law was signed around the same time that I started here. So just gave us a ton to work with.
Sure.
But he's tying in how are you getting that funding with something that's important to him, to seeing bike lanes and more family friendly options. It's personal, but not too personal. It's relatable.
Got it. Makes sense. I may have to hire you as a consultant to help me figure this crap out. Very fair, though. Do you lean into industry specific lingo that your ideal prospects really understand and will resonate with? Or do you need to keep it a little bit more generic on places like LinkedIn so you can garner a broader audience?
No, we're specific. So depending on which area of the country or which segment of the population that we want to, or our audience that we want to speak with, you might call it a project, but you might call it a pursuit. You might speak about sustainability or resiliency, but depending on who you're speaking to, they'll use different terms, and the connotation that a segment of your audience will have for resiliency and sustainability is very different. Which is an interesting insight, right? The word partnership or improve versus enhance safety is notable for our audience. So that lingo is really important. To having a good, solid feedback loop across your teams is very important.
Very fair. Okay. So last question for you, and it's intentionally broad, but you've led go-to-market and marketing at a couple organizations. They're relatively small. A lot of people listening and watching are going to be smaller companies like myself or you, etc., maybe moving into the mid-market phase slowly. What do most people get wrong about go-to-market?
So I think two things that it's just easy to get wrong are poor cross-functional collaboration.
Okay.
And not being extremely clear on who your audience is and is not. You can't just broadcast to the whole wide world. If I'm wanting to talk about drones with bridge and asset maintenance people, I cannot also be having that same conversation with the same message to our contract admin audience.
Yep.
They're going to be annoyed. Think about your own email inbox and what you see on social. Some things are perfectly targeted and you're like, oh, that's interesting. That's helpful. There's value in this. And some of
Yep.
it is bland, broad, and poorly targeted. So being really specific on who that is really important. And then aligning all of your teams is so critical and something that just doesn't seem to be always as easy or as common. Um, we have to have a common goal. We need to be working together. We have to have a solid feedback loop. All of these teams exist across different parts of that customer journey. And being able to have common messaging and a common experience for the customer is really important. Marketing can drive demand and sales closes the deal, but CX then owns that customer relationship. So how are we going to support across that customer lifecycle to continue to nurture and even expand that customer relationship? I think those are two things that.
I think going off of that, I think sales and marketing have always been way too segregated. They should be working in one. Now you see a lot of chief revenue officers that own both. Whether you have a CRO or not, or want to head in that direction, they should be tied at the hip 100%. And I think it's a drastic mistake that most people make to only have marketing focus on top of funnel and MQLs and whatnot. Frankly, I think MQLs are worthless. It's how many opportunities, how are you driving that opportunity? I imagine you're in a fairly long sales cycle, so following them through that opportunity cycle is going to be huge. I think that's absolutely missed out on, and sales reps don't give marketing enough feedback. Marketing doesn't empower sales enough with collateral. So I think you're spot on from my own experience. This is really helpful, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you having on. I know a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this. If people want to connect with you, what's the easiest way to do so?
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. My profile is Stephanie Hart Harris. And if you want to see more about what we do at Headlight, our URL is just headlight.com.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Stephanie.
Thank you.